Good morning, and welcome to the essay workshop. Um, Today, this is Ansh Kapoor. I'll be your host. With me is Maria. We're gonna go over the essays for this year's Sloan application. A little bit of do's and don'ts, tips and tricks, and Maria will guide us through it. She's the founder of Applicant Lab, and Maria, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Ansh, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, no matter where you might be in the world. It is 6 a.m. for me, and the only thing I love more than giving a webinar at 6 a.m. is doing a 6 a.m. on a Saturday. I am thrilled, however, to be here, though, because today we are going to be going through a ton of essays. If you are just getting started for your MBA application process for the upcoming season, hopefully we will be able to share some information with you that you can use to start to guide you. So, just super quick, little bit of quick introduction for me. If you haven't met me yet, hi, nice to meet you. And if you have, I'm Maria. I went to Harvard Business School in 2005, and I'm the founder of Applicant Lab. Now, what is Applicant Lab? It is a cost effective DIY software solution for excellent admissions consulting advice. I'm currently in my 20th year of giving admissions advice. And if you look at what other folks in the industry charge, this is actually probably outdated, but those hourly rates can add up pretty quickly for the management consulting, for the admissions consulting services. However, what I did is I took all of the information that I know based on now 20 years again of giving advice, and I put it into Applicant Lab, and it costs less than what you might have to pay for an hour of my time otherwise if I were pricing my services at the same rate as everyone else. So, super quick within Applicant Lab, what are the resources that really help you with the essays the most? I've got a brainstorming module that really helps you root out which stories that you've got will or might be the most compelling. There's a branding module where we think about, okay, what do each one of these stories say about me? And then here we've got all these steps here in the middle, well, sort of off to the side, but mostly in the middle that are like, okay, I really break down the essay writing process into little manageable chunks. So that way, even if you tend to struggle with writer's block or you're not sure where to start, I've got you covered. Just follow my steps and you will come out on the other side. So, with that intro out of the way, let's talk MIT Sloan. Um, so, for years, MIT Sloan has been tied as one of my favorite MBA applications. Now, with HBS eliminating its essay and now creating three other essays, HBS has now fallen out of being tied. I don't like the new essays very much. Anyway, we could talk about that later. But so now at this point, MIT Sloan is my favorite of the MBA applications. I've always loved it. I love it even more so now. A couple of, we've already talked about this in another session. I'm sure someone else already did the application form, but they just give you so many opportunities to really convey who you are. And two of those opportunities come through the essays. So the main essay that MIT Sloan is most famous for is the cover letter essay. I am putting up the entire text of the cover letter, but basically what you need to know, you can always come back later to this video and pause it. But for now, all you need to know is that it starts with this big blurb with this aspirational language around here's the sort of person that we want to come to Sloan. And then it says, well, so taking all these things that we just talked about above into consideration, submit a cover letter seeking a place in the MIT Sloan MBA program. Basically, I don't know why they just really like putting this essay in a cover letter format, but it is essentially the same sort of essay or a similar sort of essay what you might find for other schools. They just like it in letter format, but it's 300 words or less. 300 words should fit roughly on one printed page of paper. Um, and they had to clarify like those 300 words is not the date and the address and all that other stuff. It's the core information. And part of the reason why they want it as a cover letter is because their rationale, and it's a reasonable one. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it, is that when you apply for jobs later on in the future, you will have to write a cover letter for those jobs. So you will read the job description, whatever the hiring company wants, and then you'll have to think to yourself, okay, how do I meet the criteria that this employer has laid out? MIT is basically giving you practice in that. Not only are they giving you practice, but they're getting a hint of like, okay, what is this person going to be like, not only as a student when they're here, because that's part of what they're getting at, uh, but also when we put them in front of a corporate recruiter, how will they be able to articulate the value that they provide to that community, or in that case, in the case of an employer, to that company or organization where they are going to go work. So the cover letter has been the famous, some schools really like to have their iconic question, and for years this cover letter has been the defining iconic part of the MIT Sloan application. They have also introduced another essay, a short answer question, which is basically, it's almost as long as the cover letter, 250 words. At least that's the maximum you can go. Please respond to a short answer question about your background, right? We want to learn a little bit more about what's the context in which you either grew up or what have been some of your more formative experiences. So the question tech, this one's shorter, so I'll read this one the whole way through. How has the world you come from shaped who you are today? For example, your family, culture, community all help shape aspects of your life experiences and perspective. Please use this opportunity to share more about your background. Now, notice that even though they say family, culture, and community, that doesn't mean that you have to then say, if we divide 250 words by three, that's about 70 words with a little bit of extra at the end. So, like, I'm not saying it should be 70 words to family, 70 words to culture, and 70 words to community. I think sometimes people might interpret it that way. It's not necessarily that way at all. Someone might not mention their family at all. Someone might only mention their family. I think the important thing here is to stop and think about, okay, what have some of those more formative experiences been that have shaped the trajectory of my life? A good thought exercise for this could be, if this thing or this aspect of my life did not exist, if I had been raised by a different family, if I had been raised in a different culture, if I had been raised in a different whatever it might be, would I be, how would I be different today? And so that could be a good place to think about, like, okay, instead of trying to think like what has influenced me, sometimes it might be easier to start the thought process by thinking, okay, if I didn't have some of these things, would I be a different person today? That might be an interesting way to think about it. So I think a really important thing to keep in mind here is MIT, right? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Mens et Manus is their, mind in hand is their sort of logo or slogan, I should say, not the logo. It's their motto. That's the word I'm thinking of. All right, kick in caffeine. It's their motto, right? It's all about mind in hand. Arguably, MIT is the most famous engineering school probably in the world. And so, as a result, it unsurprisingly tends to attract a lot of people with very technical backgrounds applying to its MBA program. And in fact, should you go get your MBA at MIT, and if you have a technical mindset, even tangentially, right? I'm not saying you have to be a neuro quantum computing physicist. Even if you just have a passing interest in technology, going to business school at Sloan is going to be like a playground of delights, because you're going to have so many people who are doing amazing technical things. And if you're even remotely entrepreneurial, for example, you might be able to team up with one of these roboticists or chip designers or whatever it is, and you might eventually try to start a business, or at the very least you're going to have the opportunity, at least if you're self-motivated, to learn a lot about the true cutting edge of technology. So that's the good news. The bad news, though, is that because Sloan tends to attract a lot more engineering types to its program because it's MIT, the problem is, number one, engineers are even more overrepresented in the MIT applicant pool as they might be in other schools. And the second challenge with this is that people think to themselves, and this is a reasonable thing to think. I'm not blaming you for thinking this, but they think to themselves, okay, it's MIT engineering school, so I need to prove in my application that I am like the best engineer that's ever engineered. I need to show them that, ooh, I was doing calculus since I was 2 weeks old. I've got 15 patents to my name, all of this stuff. The problem is that Sloan is the business school at MIT. They're not an engineering school, it's actually the business school. And as a result, they are looking for people who have the potential to become good business leaders. So, as part of that, they are not necessarily looking to admit into their class the quote unquote best engineer. So, if we were to think about this as as a, it's not about like, oh, well, my algorithm can compile things in 0.03 nanoseconds, whereas that other candidate's, it's a lot slower and it's I don't know, whatever, nanoseconds. It's not about like who's the better engineer, who can design the better rocket, who can write the better line of code. That's actually not what interests them per se. What's more interesting to them is who has the people skills and those managerial skills that when they combine it with their foundation in engineering, but the engineering foundation is not sufficient on its own, right? When they combine it with the foundation engineering and then take their people skills and their management skills, that combination going to then hopefully propel them to be a person who makes real impact in the business world. So to be clear, if someone's a very, very gifted engineer, like, whoa, anything they touch, it's like, whoa, it works perfectly. But if they can't communicate, if they can't work well in teams, if they can't lead others, they're not going to do as well in this application process as someone who might not be that great of an engineer. Maybe they're kind of mediocre, but wow, every time they lead a team, that team, they get it done. They like each other at the end. The clients are like, we love this. We please send them back. We want to do more projects with your company. We love you guys. Right? That's sort of that person, that second person that I described is more likely to be able to win over the hearts and minds of the Sloan Admissions Committee. Do you have to show that you're innovative? Yes, that is one of the core values that MIT really likes to see. But the ability to recite pi out to a zillion digits, that's not it. That's missing the point. So please do not waste a ton of space in your MIT application, especially in the cover letter, which is where a lot of people tend to make this mistake. Don't waste a ton of time trying to convince me, the reader, that wow, this person is the best engineer that we've ever seen, because that's missing the mark. So with that out of the way, let me now pull up what we've got is we've received a sample essay. Ba, 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 ba. So I'm now going to share that part of my screen. And we are going to go through and look at, where are we? Ba, ba, ba. This should be it. Okie doke. Let me see. Yep. Okay, it's up. All right. So someone has very nicely submitted both of their sample essays, both the cover letter as well as the tell us about the context in which you were raised or grew up type of essay. So let me see if we can zoom in. I know it's going to be a little bit hard to see everything. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to go through, and for some of these, I'm going to tell you what I think might be suboptimal about it. But for some of it, maybe we'll see if you guys are all paying attention, and I might ask you if you might realize what I think might be suboptimal about this. So right off the top, the very first line. This cover letter is addressed to Ms. Donna Levinson and Mr. Rod Garcia. Rod Garcia has not worked at MIT Sloan for about 3 years. Rod Garcia retired, I believe, in 2021. So I am sure that what happened with this situation is that this person, this candidate, probably did something like looked up MIT Sloan sample essay, right? They probably Googled something like that. They found a sample essay from several years ago, because there was a time it was Rod Garcia was in charge of admissions for, I don't know, 20 years. He had one of the longest tenures in admissions. Then for a while he and Donna were sort of sharing it, and then he left, and now Donna is the main person in charge. And so this applicant probably found a sample essay somewhere and was like, great, copy paste. I am so opposed to I think there are some elements of looking at samples that might be useful, but overall, I think sample essays can cause more harm than good at times, because you get it in your head like, this is how it has to be. And the problem is that then you might make a really potentially very embarrassing mistake, frankly, if you're like, I mean, at least he's still alive as far as I know, so it wouldn't be, but he doesn't work there anymore. Like, what the heck? So right off the bat, that's not great. So whatever it is you're doing, make sure that you're paying attention to current situations, and not things from the past. This is a very minor one. There was also some, maybe it just showed up weird on my screen, but there were like there was like this extra comma here. You don't really need the commas, but that's very minor. Okay. So, dear MIT Sloan's Admission Committee, great. My work at the name of the company, and by the way, I have redacted the identifying information for this and for all of the ones that we're doing today. So, my work at company over the last 6 years has involved designing, developing, and testing instruments with zero failure systems for some technical purpose, right? Instruments, we know it has something to do with engineering. I have played pivotal roles in, and then the applicant goes on to mention some project that if you are from this person's world, if you're from their specific area of engineering, it's, I guess it must be really famous, but I have never heard of it. It might be worth mentioning that this applicant is from another country. And so it was a domestic, they were referencing something that happened in their country. So you don't necessarily want, if you're going to mention something that's very technical, we need to think about the fact that MIT Sloan is looking for people who can communicate very well. Because if you, let's say you've got an engineering degree as a background and you go to MIT Sloan, and as a result, you end up taking a business leadership role at a technical company, you will be called upon to do things like communicate this very complicated technology in a way that non technical people can understand it. For you to be an effective manager, not just within the engineering vertical, not just to become the CTO, but if you want to become the CEO, you're going to need to communicate with investors what this technology does. You're going to need to communicate with customers what the technology does, maybe if it's a B2C company, right? And so you're going to need to know how to explain things in a way that does not involve very, very technical information. And even if we step aside from the technical issue, if you've worked on some major project that I've never heard of, I've heard of something like, say, the Paris Olympics, but I haven't necessarily heard of the whatever project to the, but it was some sort of like domestic project. Never heard of it. So this is important for anyone who's applying. Realize that the admissions reader does not live in your world. So when you live in your world, you're like, everyone knows about this project that my country has been doing. Not everyone does, maybe not. So just make sure that you, part of this exercise is putting yourself in the shoes of the admissions officer and thinking, okay, what do they need to know about me? What might they not might what might they already know, and what might they not even understand? So I had no idea what this famous, some sort of initiative at this person's country, I had never heard of in my life. um Now, what I would advise in this case is, well, should this person just not even mention it? Of course they should mention it, but put it in plain English, right? Like, I worked on a project to help, I, I'm making this up, right? But like, to build a high speed train between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Cool. If you put it in that phrasing, anyone can understand it. But if you say, I was working on, I don't know, project 4627 under the domestic transportation code of whatever, like, no one's going to know it. Okay. So, developing innovative solutions for complex challenges in whatever this area of engineering is. Excuse me. Let me just take a quick sip of tea. I'm losing my, just a sec. Sorry about that. My throat got really dry for a second there. Okay. In specific area of technology. Okay. Besides developing $1 million, and then they mentioned the type of product. So maybe it's a computer chip, maybe it's an aqueduct system, whatever it is. I have developed in-house systems that reduce costs, optimize performance, and minimize reliance on external resources. So why did I highlight this here? I have developed one of the things that we need to think about, especially for MIT, because again, if MIT were simply selecting based on the best engineers, they might let in a class of, little Einsteins, but maybe those people can't communicate and can't lead and can't work on teams, right? So here this person says, I have developed in-house systems. Of course, you should say what you've done. You are the one applying to business school, but make sure that it is clear also that you can work with others, that you're not off by yourself, like in a little cubicle somewhere, just like not talking to another human being, working on your computer, or in the lab just by yourself, not talking to another human being. So I'm not saying that you can't have a phrase in your cover letter like, I have done X. Of course, you have to explain what you have done. You are the one applying. But keep in mind that you're going to also want to convey, at a minimum that you can work on teams, but ideally that's kind of like even the barest of minimums, but more that you can lead teams, that you can be someone who's like, guys, we're doing it this way, it's the wrong way, we need to change direction, we need to do things differently, we need to, you know what, that thing that we did, it wasn't great, we need to get better, whatever that might be, right? Okay, moving on. One of the most successful endeavors of my life has been successfully completing, and then again, a similar technical feat. Now, I will say, in this case, they improved from the first paragraph because they actually explained in plain English what the feat was. When I first read it in the paragraph above, I didn't even know if they. I couldn't even tell you like what it was because it was so technical. So at least here they put it in plain English. I redacted it again for privacy reasons. Um, I was instrumental, and so I ended up. I really am a big fan of the movie Back to the Future, so I'm replacing all technical terms here with Back to the Future references. I was instrumental in developing the flux capacitor for the Doc Brown slash DeLorean 1955 mission, the first instrument in the world to carry out the in situ. And then it was like, I'm going to throw together technical words it was like the in situ calibration of the optimized something or other. I don't even know. It was just a whole bunch of technical words. I designed the cooling mechanism for the instrument and carried out extensive calibration before it was used. So again, it should come as no surprise that it's like, okay, great. I love that you designed this cooling mechanism, whatever it is. However, first of all, I'm already going to know this from your resume because remember that slide? I think it was like one of the first slides that in the presentation where I showed you all the different elements of the MIT Sloan application. You're going to have other places where you say what your responsibilities were. Right? This could go into the resume, this could go into other places. So I don't necessarily need to know what your responsibilities were. I'm already going to know that. And again, this does not show you working with others. Maybe this person did work with others. Maybe they're an amazing leader, but so far it's not coming through. Okay, after the time machine returned, I was responsible for coordinating the DeLorean operation with the other team, tackling several challenges, such as, and again, this list was of technical challenges, getting up to 88 miles per hour, harnessing lightning, leaving cool fire tracks on the ground. Um, and so why did I highlight the word coordinating? Because this was the missed opportunity. Up until now, the descriptions of like I was in charge of making sure that the DeLorean doors open, that Doc Brown had the plutonium needed for the time machine. Like I first of all, I already know that. And second of all, it's not really helping me understand you as a leader. This word coordinating, this has potential. But this should be the focus. What exactly did you do? Because coordinating is kind of a it's not the strongest of words. So what I would advise this candidate to do is to really cut out not literally everything that we've mentioned so far, but a large amount of what's already been done, of written, I should say. We don't really need it. I'm going to know what you do based on other parts of the application. What I want to know in this cover letter is, are you a leader in general? And are you specifically the type of leader that I, MIT, described in that whole paragraph on my admissions site right before telling you to write a cover letter? So this is where this candidate and any candidate needs to focus. They just sort of throw it on like, oh yeah, I coordinated some other team with some other team. Were you what does that mean? Were you just simply obeying orders and the other team was like, hey, you need to do this, and you're like, okay? Or did you actually say, guys, we need to do things differently? Or hey, have you thought about this? Or what if we optimize things by kind of changing it up a bit? That's the sort of thing that you need to convey. um and then this person also, again, oh, we overcame these hurdles and we operated the time machine, and we did all this stuff. Again, very focused on actions taken and, I mean, like responsibilities, I should say, that are engineering focused, not people focused, and stuff I already know. And then the we, so it's very fuzzy. I'm essentially almost through the entire cover letter, and I don't know that I could tell you what exactly. I know this person designed all kinds of crazy things for the time machine. I get it. But what did they do in terms of being a member of the group? How did they influence that team around them? Because first, the word coordinating is very general, kind of generic. And then it gets even more generic because it's like, well, and then we did a whole bunch of stuff. The thing is that we are not the ones applying to business school. You are the one applying to business school. So within this team, I still don't know what this person did. And then the final sentence of the main body of the this paragraph. Beyond the technical intricacies, this experience taught me valuable lessons in problem solving, teamwork, and adaptability. Beyond the technical intricacies is where the bulk of your cover letter should be. Tell me about tell me about the valuable lessons, especially in teamwork. I mean, any of these, the problem solving, the teamwork, and the adaptability, but the problem solving is implicit because the other way, I know that you're a good engineer, or at least you're competent from your resume. And I also know if you're currently employed as an engineer, I know you're not terrible at it because if you were really, really, really bad at it, you would have been fired, right? So you don't need to prove to me again, like, I'm so good at solving problems with my employer. Like, yeah, no kidding. If you weren't, you wouldn't have a job, maybe. I mean, it's not the only reason people lose jobs, but still, like, that's implicit. So tell me the things that aren't as implicit. So it's I kind of I chuckled a little when I was going through this to prep for this session because I was like beyond the technical intricacies, like that's the throwaway line. This should be we need to flip the word allocation so that it's exactly beyond the technical intricacies is what I need to know about you. So as I prepare for the next phase of my career, I see MIT Sloan as the ideal platform to develop my innovative skills further and refine my leadership skills through the action learning approach and engaging in the Sloan intensive period. Um, Now, most schools are going to ask, why do you want to come to our school? Right? It might be overtly right there in the question text. It might be a whole 500-word essay. It might be a quick 50 character, anything in between. But on some level, a school wants to know usually, why do you want to come to our school? Why is this right here suboptimal? Because the action learning approach is what MIT is famous for. And literally every student that goes to Sloan will benefit from the action learning approach and will benefit from the Sloan intensive period. So this person has not said anything that is okay. Here's a specific thing that Sloan offers that for me will be beneficial. Here's a good sort of rule of thumb is like if anyone else in the applicant pool could write this sentence, or if like literally in this case, if 100% of the other applicants could easily just paste this right into their application and it wouldn't raise any, it would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Literally 100% of applicants are going to refine their leadership skills through the action learning approach and the Sloan intent. Like, so there's nothing specific here. It's this candidate should either find something specific or honestly just remove this. Because the other thing is Sloan's like, yeah, we know you want to come here. Like, that's why you're applying and jumping through the 4 million hoops. They give you so many hoops. If you get invited to interview, you then have to do even more work. Anyway, and then I look forward to joining the time travel club at Sloan. What do you want to do to the time travel club? What do you want to do there? What's your vision for what you're going to contribute to that club? They don't provide any ideas. They don't provide any, like, what are you going to give? What are you going to contribute to the club? So, right now this person, I have no doubt I've come away with a very clear idea that if I ever need to turn a DeLorean car into a time machine, this is my person. This is the person I want to hire. Absolutely. Can you start tomorrow? Great. Do I know if I want this person in my business school class? I don't know. I don't really have a sense of their leadership. They didn't really seem to research the program that much. And they didn't tell me any information about them as the sorts of leaders that we described in the little blurb that MIT provides prior to the cover letter. So moving on to the next one. How has the world you come from shaped who you are today? Your family, culture, community have shaped aspects of your experience and background. Okay. So sorry about that. I am a product of resilience and determination fueled by a desire for growth. It's a little generic. But okay. Most people are fueled by a desire for growth. It's the human condition. Not everyone, but most people. So, you know, pretty much most, maybe not 100% of people can say this, but a lot of people can say that they are fueled by a desire for growth. Okay, I was born in a certain area, which was a region entrenched with, and they named a certain ethnic group. There was some ethnic group violence. Again, it was an ethnic, I consider myself, Maria, to be a relatively well-traveled person, but I had never necessarily heard of this specific ethnic group. So again, don't just assume that the person sitting in Boston, Massachusetts, or Cambridge, Massachusetts, is going to know, like, oh yeah, that ethnic group. If you think it's a name that they're not gonna recognize, then I think you can just say, like, there was a lot of war, maybe you just even say, like, there was a lot of violence between different ethnic groups, instead of naming, like, the original way how it was phrased, it was like the person just assumed that, oh yeah, of course I know who those people are. um I didn't. uh my childhood was anything but conventional. There was a constant fear of agitation and conflict. The threat of violence forced us to leave our ancestral village home and move to a nearby town. My family's belief in education became a beacon in these dark times. During this turmoil, I secured admission to whatever, some sort of school that they won a scholarship to, and I moved really far away. I moved thousands of miles away. And then I was selected for the Doc Brown, Marty McFly scholarship. They just sort of casually threw out this name of the scholarship that maybe somewhere else in the application form they explained what it was, but assuming that they didn't, it's like, well, I've never heard of it. So I mean, I guess it's a big deal, but again, I'm not from your world, so I've never heard of it. This school or scholarship exposed me to diverse perspectives and made me resolute and independent. I excelled in school, secured admission into one of the nation's top colleges, and went on to join the name of the time machine company where I work today. Um, my journey from childhood struggles to now working for this company slash helping the time machine, which I talked about in the cover letter, is a testament to my perseverance and grit. So overall, I think this is good. I mean, it does definitely give a sense of, okay, how is this person uh influenced? I would urge, it again, this is a case where I would love for there to be maybe a slight reallocation in the wording, where it's less about what happened and there was a threat of violence, and I think you could just pretty quickly say, like, due to armed conflicts, between different ethnic groups in my town, we had to flee. And then jump more into stuff that's sort of more specific to you. So here, this person talks about at the bottom, perseverance and grit. Like, I'd love a little bit less about the background information of the town and the leaving and the moving, and give me a little bit more information about perseverance and grit. It would be a little bit better to get to this part faster, and then perhaps give a an example of, I mean, actually going to college is, of course, an example of perseverance, but are there any other examples, right? If you're going to make a statement about yourself, like, I am someone who is super duper all about perseverance and grit, great, I love it. But I'm going to need a little bit more concreteness there, as opposed to, I ended up going to college, which, to be clear, I'm not trying to diss going to of course, for this person to go to a top college, amazing, requires a ton of perseverance. However, a lot of people in these elite MBA applicant pools, by definition, all of them have gone to colleges, right? You have to have gone to college to apply. And most of them have, in fact, gone to the top colleges, right? So MIT and IIT, ooh, two little IT, blank IT peas in a pod, right? So I don't know if this person went to IIT, by the way. I'm just sort of, but I'm assuming that that's where they went, or something similar. So, like, in other words, like, this is a great story, but a lot of it is very common. A lot of people demonstrate perseverance by getting to college. Give me some more examples of this, and maybe cut out some of the words beforehand. Um, and then this last part is a good, it gets better. Beyond the academic rigor, I cultivated a deep appreciation for education. I engaged in a social impact club. I taught math to underprivileged kids. I'm still teaching underprivileged kids today. I'm doing STEM, science and engineering, lessons to children living in remote villages, helping thousands of children learn. So what I like about this is that a lot of times people will say things like, "Wow, I had a really hard childhood. You would not believe the childhood I had. And boy, oh boy, did it make me a terrific person." And then you're like, "Cool, what's the evidence?" And maybe they spent so many words describing the horrible thing they escaped from that then it's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a really good person." The end. And scene. We're done here. But like, no, I need some evidence. So what I like about this is that this person, I think they could have made a clearer link, but it's clear enough. It's fine. Between like, okay, I had this kind of impoverished, or underprivileged background. Education was my way out. Therefore, I now help others with their educational endeavors. That link is very clear. There's a clear link between here's this rough thing I had to go through, but look at the concrete thing it led me to do. There's clear evidence that I was impacted by this and I am now contributing to others. My only minor note here was that the claim that you've helped thousands of children risks sounding a little bit like an exaggeration. I'm not saying it's not true, but just be sure that on the chance that you this happens to ever come up, they won't try to verify this stuff until you get accepted, and you say you're coming and you pay the deposit. But if it is a claim that you're making, just be sure that there's at least some way, just in case later on they're like, so you said thousands of how do you prove the thousands of children thing again? Um, so just make sure that you can prove any claim that you make. And that is our analysis of the Sloan essays.
All right. Yeah, that was great. We do have some questions, and we have about 7 minutes left. Um, so I'll just go ahead and start displaying them on the
Yeah,
screen.
I'll take a sip of tea. Well, I've got the time.
So Ayush is asking, is it necessary to start by addressing names in the essay? Can we just start directly by addressing Dear XYZ, business school name, admissions committee?
Yeah, I mean, this is um, yeah, sorry. This is the only school as of now that I know of that has a cover letter. So yeah, it's fine to just say dear Sloan at MIT Sloan Admissions Committee. You don't even have to necessarily put their names.
Okay, thank you. Rahul is asking how to craft long-term goals. What things should we mention while writing the long-term goals?
Okay, Rahul, that is a whole other the long-term goals aspect. So I didn't go into that because you'll notice that Sloan does not ask about your long-term goals. Um, so we're not going to really get into that, but how to craft your long-term goals, I will say that it is something that requires a lot of thought. I have an entire module in Applicant Lab devoted to it. This could easily be a 3-hour webinar on its own. Um, so I think we'll have to skip this question not only because we don't have time, but also MIT Sloan does not necessarily really ask for long-term goals, so um, it's not really part of the cover letter.
Thank you. Jivesh is asking, what should be the focus more on, whether giving instances of personal life or from professional life to be able to write a perfect essay?
Right. So I think, Jivesh, what's nice about the MIT Sloan application, and hence one of the reasons why I think it's become my favorite application this season. The cover letter. Well, first of all, let's start with the easy one. The second question is clearly about your personal life, right? What has influenced the person you've become? Obviously, that's going to be examples from your personal life. And then for the cover letter, if we think back to what I said at the beginning, that part of what you're doing is you're not only showing MIT Sloan that you can write a good cover letter to them, but that you can write a good cover letter in general for a future employer at a minimum, right? You can think to yourself, what are the needs that this organization has? Do I meet those needs? Boom, I'm going to prove it. I would advise that for the cover letter, all of it essentially be from, excuse me, all of it be from your professional life in terms of the accomplishments,
Okay,
pretty
thank
much.
you.
Because we've got that. We've got that now,
Vineet,
that extra essay.
yeah. Vineet is asking, how important is it to mention numbers in essays, like profit or revenue numbers?
So beneath, I this is a good question. I would tread lightly in throwing in a ton of numbers because again, think back to the very first slide that I had. There's a whole list of things that MIT Sloan, you can submit as part of your application. So the resume is usually the best place to put in a lot of those numbers versus the cover letter. I'm not saying you don't put in a number. Of course you can put numbers, but just make sure that it's either, maybe those numbers are phrased in a slightly different way than they are in the resume. Um, and the numbers are not what matters so much in the cover letter when you're trying to show yourself being an innovative leader.
Cute. Should we follow the STAR method to write stories in the essay? Can you suggest any other effective approaches?
Yeah, so I think star is perfect for interviews because when you're listening to a story, we've been sort of conditioned to have a story like have a beginning and then a middle and then an end. Um, for the stories in an essay, it usually is a great way to do it, but it's not the only way, right? You can start an effective essay, especially the shorter ones where you don't have that much word count to build up what happened and to really explain it. You might want to start, in fact, with in the middle. You could start with, for example, action. You could start with a quote, right? Oh my gosh, 1.8 gigawatts, shouted Doc Brown wildly at me as the time machine took off. Like, you could start in the middle of the action and then grab my attention with that and then say something like, I was in 1955 in Hill Valley, California, and I was, my time machine had broken, and then here's what I had to do. So you can mix it. It should have like those four elements, but they don't have to go in that order necessarily, especially people who are better, stronger writers. But if writing is not something that comes naturally to you, then absolutely you can use star.
Okay, thank you. In the essays, should we mention names of people such as an alum who convinced me to attend XYZ business school, or is it better to avoid using specific names?
Yeah. So in the application forms, many schools will actually have a separate section that says something like, have you spoken to members of our community? If so, list them here. So you might not have to put their names in the essays if the school has in their application form a place for you to put their names. Now, if they don't have a place to put the names, then yes, I think you can mention someone's name and then what their graduation year was, but just don't go crazy. Maybe limit it to two people at the most. Don't be like, here are the 47 people I spoke to. That's, you know, use your best judgment for that one.
Thank you. Would your community service be seen as professional experience in the cover letter?
I think community service is beneficial for people who have not been able to prove their leadership in the workplace. And that's where, let's say someone works for an employer and the employer is like, sorry, like you're a junior, whatever, and you're not allowed to say or do anything. Frequently, then those people who are stuck in an employer like that will then use the community service as a place, they'll just knock it out of the park, right? They'll just do an amazing job with the community service leadership to prove leadership that way. Uh, However, again, if we think about the fact that now we have this separate essay to talk about how things have influenced you, the context in which you grew up. If that community service that you're doing was inspired by something from your life, from your personal life on some level, it seems to me like the cover letter, you could put it in there, but it seems like not optimal. Unless if it is just like, you're like, no, you don't understand. That is the best story of leadership because I was really an innovative person and I helped drive the team forward. And then great. But all else being equal, it should be professional, in
Okay.
my opinion.
Thank you so much. We are out of time. Thank you for everyone who stuck around, came for this session. Hopefully, you got some good tips. Uh, Maria, thank you so much. It was some great insights into the cover letter and the short answer question. Yeah, I'll let you finish up.
No, if you thought this was useful, there's a whole lot more where that came from at applicantlab.com. I dissect every little nook and cranny of every top school's application. So I gave you some of my tips here, but there's a lot more where that came from, all for a very affordable price.
All
So
right.
thank guys for joining me, and yeah, if you want more, come find me at Applicant Lab. But otherwise, I will see you in the next session.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.